This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors.
It's not the towering sail on the bay that charms me, nor the stern fog-wrapped hills. It's something infectious. The words of legendary jazz poet Bob Kaufman there, to kick us off in style. Hello, wanderers of sound and lovers of the city by the bay. Welcome to Travel with Lara and Luca. I'm Luca, ready to guide you through the storied streets of San Francisco.
And I'm Lara, here to sprinkle a little bit of extra magic onto those already enchanting streets. We're going to be your chatty companions for today's auditory expedition, revealing the heart and soul of a city that's been romancing dreamers for well over a century.
Talking about romancing, Lara, did you know that Tony Bennett left his heart here? I sure know why. After today's journey, our listeners might book the next flight out and scout the streets for it.
It's a scavenger hunt worth undertaking. Now, in today's rolling fog of a show, we're taking you on a tour unlike any other. We'll begin with the iconic sights that have defined San Francisco's skyline, sculpted by nature and man alike.
From the engineering marvel that is the Golden Gate Bridge to the trolley cars clanging up those legendary hills, who wouldn't want a piece of that action?
Speaking of action, I can't wait to describe to you in our second segment the culinary adventure that awaits in San Francisco. I'm talking food that's as rich in history as it is in flavor.
Oh, the cioppino, Lara. I still remember the first spoonful of that fish stew. What a symphony for the taste buds.
And then we'll whisk you away to hidden gems sprinkled throughout the city.
I'll let you in on a secret garden that even some locals haven't stumbled upon yet. When I found this place, Lara, my heart did a leap, a jeté, if you will.
It's a leap we'll all be doing together. And because we don't want to keep you on the beaten path for too long, we'll be sharing must-see places that, well, you must see.
Not to mention the weird facts that'll make your eyebrow arch higher than the peak of Lombard Street.
Followed by a deep dive into the history that shaped not only San Francisco, but echoed across the entire country.
With all your new knowledge, we'll round it all off with some expert travel tips to make your real-life trip to San Fran as smooth as the bay on a calm day.
And should you have a few extra days to spare, we'll dish out our favorite side excursions to make the most of the wider region.
Speaking of making the most, how did you first fall in love with San Francisco, Lara?
How could I not? The art, the culture, the generous swathes of fog that give you the theatrical entrance you never knew you needed. Each time I ascend from Muni into the daylight, it's like stepping onto stage. And what about you, Luca? What was your introductory chapter to SF like?
For me, it was the melding of past and present. Seeing the historic Victorian houses standing shoulder to shoulder with sleek modern skyscrapers, like stepping through time with every block. You start with a morning coffee in the 21st century and end up somewhere in the 1800s by lunch.
So sit back or up, depending where you're listening. Tighten those laces if you're on a walk, or turn up the volume if you're lounging at home.
Because we're just about ready to launch into the iconic sights of San Francisco. Picture it, mist slowly unveiling the red of the Golden Gate, like the curtain going up at the opera.
Stay with us as we unveil the wonders of a city that captures the heart, delights the stomach, and dazzles the soul. Next up, iconic sights.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be dazzled as we embark on a tour of San Francisco's most iconic sights.
That's right. It's time to talk about the landmarks that define the city by the bay. First up on our list, none other than the majestic Golden Gate Bridge.
The Golden Gate. Did you know when it was completed in 1937, it was the tallest and longest suspension bridge in the world? It's a marvel of modern engineering.
It sure is, but beyond the stats, it's the bridge's international orange color that grabs your attention. They chose the color to enhance visibility in fog, but it also looks fantastic against the blue of the bay and the sky. Don't you think?
Absolutely. You can't beat those views from Crissy Field. I love picnicking there with the bridge in the background. It's like being in a living postcard.
So poetic, Luca. Speaking of views, my favorite spot is Battery Spencer. You climb up there, and it feels like the whole city is laid out before you, with the bridge soaring overhead.
And if you're feeling adventurous, folks, walking across the bridge is a must-do. Just beware of the wind up there. It's been known to steal more than a few hats.
True, I've sacrificed a hat or two to the bridge gods myself. Now, from one historic site to another, let's set sail in our minds to Alcatraz Island.
The Rock, infamous for once housing some of America's most notorious criminals, like Al Capone and the Birdman Robert Stroud.
You know, many people don't realize Alcatraz was also a military fort and later a site of Native American activism. It's filled with layers of history.
Plus, it's been featured in countless movies and TV shows. It has a certain mysterious allure, doesn't it?
Definitely, when you're on the island looking back at the city, you get a sense of just how isolated it was for those prisoners. It's haunting, really.
On a lighter note, let's talk about San Francisco's charming cable cars. Not only do they add to the city's quaint charm, but they're also the only National Historic landmarks that move.
That's a cool tidbit. It's a ride like no other, clanging along tracks set against steep streets. I always find it amusing how everyone waves at the cable cars as they pass by.
Oh, I'm the first to admit it. I wave back like I'm in a parade. There's one conductor, Mr. Ellsworth, who's like a stand-up comedian. You'll get a show along with your commute.
Always makes my day. Now imagine this. These cars have been climbing SF's hills for over a century, and they still run on the original machinery.
A testament to San Francisco's knack for preservation. But you know, I think we can't discuss iconic sites without a nod to the sea lions at Pier 39, can we?
You're right, the barking pinnipeds are stars in their own right. They just showed up after the '89 earthquake and decided it was home.
They're like those out-of-town guests who come for the weekend and stay for a year. Except these guys are now a San Francisco staple.
Absolutely, and I love how people from around the world come just to watch them laze on the docks. It's a unique kind of wildlife encounter.
With all this talk of waterfront and sea lions, this is the perfect segue into our next iconic site, the lively Fisherman's Wharf. Lara, I've got a soft spot for crab stands. You get fresh seafood right there by the water, and the atmosphere is just bustling.
The Wharf, with its sourdough bread and clam chowder, it's a sensory wonderland. Though, truth be told, it's not just crab and sourdough drawing in the crowds.
Don't I know it? It's also the gateway to the seaside treasures of the bay, Alcatraz tours, sunset cruises, you name it. Fisherman's Wharf is a launch pad for marine adventures.
It's the historic heart of the city's fishing industry, and I love that you can still feel that history amidst the entertainment and shopping.
History, food, and the bay all converge there. Well, I think we've covered some serious ground on our iconic sites jaunt. But you know what, Lara? I'm getting hungry just thinking about all of that delicious seafood at the wharf.
Perfect timing, because guess what's up next? We're about to dive into San Francisco's delectable cuisine, from the world-famous Ghirardelli chocolate to the legendary Mission burritos.
My stomach's growling already. So stick around, folks, as we taste our way through the myriad of flavors that this city has to offer in Segment 2, Delicious Cuisine. Ah, the flavorful tapestry of San Francisco cuisine. Let's dig in, shall we?
Oh yes, the kind of dig-in where no fork or spoon for that matter is left unturned, right, Luca?
Precisely, Lara. And where better to start than with a dish that's as San Franciscan as the fog itself, cioppino.
Cioppino, that sumptuous seafood stew. You know, legend has it that Italian fishermen of North Beach concocted this dish right on their boats, throwing together the day's catch with a tomato-based broth.
An oceanic hodgepodge, if you will. And let me tell you, that first spoonful, it's like a warm hug from the Pacific itself.
Oh, I could not agree more. But Luca, let's not forget about what one must absolutely pair with cioppino.
Ah, you're singing my song, Lara. The sourdough bread from Boudin Bakery.
Yes! Did you know that the sourdough here dates back to the California Gold Rush? That's some serious edible history.
It's like biting into the past, Lara. The crunch of the crust, the tang of the sourdough. I mean, there's a reason the city is knee-deep in bread puns.
And it's all due to the unique bacteria found here, Lactobacillus sanfrancisensis. Fancy that, our bread has its own bacteria species.
Only in San Francisco, right? But let's roll this doughy conversation south of the border to the Mission District for another one of the city's claims to fame, the Mission Burrito.
Oh, the burrito to rule them all. A portable flavor fiesta wrapped in foil, and not for the faint of appetite.
Absolutely. And it's not just any ordinary burrito. It's hefty, it's stuffed, and boy does it satiate. You've got rice, beans, guacamole, cheese, salsa, and that perfectly seasoned carne asada.
Or for vegetarians like me, Luca, a medley of grilled veggies with all that goodness.
You know you need two hands for this sort of operation. And even then, it's a delicate balance to keep all the flavors from escaping.
Speaking of balance, San Francisco is all about balance and innovation in cuisine, which segues us nicely into the farm-to-table movement. We're talking about menus that honor the season, the land, and sustainable practices.
Oh, you hit the farmer's market every Saturday, don't you, Lara?
Guilty as charged. Chatting up the growers, sampling the heirloom tomatoes like they're fine wine, it's my kind of weekend ritual.
And those farm-to-table restaurants are no different, right? Every item tells a story, from the heirloom beet to the free-range chicken to the vinaigrette that's drizzled with just enough whimsy.
It's a story you can taste, Luca. And these chefs, they're like the authors of edible narratives, only their pages are plates.
And to think, San Francisco has been at the heart of this movement since its rise in the 1970s. Chefs here are still pioneering with their rooftop gardens and hyper-local ingredients.
Speaking of local, we couldn't possibly wrap this segment without a toast to the intoxicating craft brewery scene, could we?
Not on your life. The city's microbreweries craft beer with character, a hoppy reflection of the neighborhoods they hail from.
Reflective indeed. The floral notes, the bold hops, the subtle maltiness. It's more than just a pint, Luca. It's a narrative in a glass.
And with each sip, you're drinking in a piece of the city's story. Now that's what I call refreshing.
From the liquid libations to the foodie sensations, San Francisco's culinary scene indeed leaves a taste worth savoring.
But don't fill up just yet, folks, because after the break, we're whisking you away to the San Francisco's hidden gems, where the city's secrets are served with a side of splendor. You know, Lara, San Francisco is like a good book that never lets you stop at the cover. There's so much more once you delve in. Which brings us to today's Hidden Gems segment.
Ah, the secret gardens and nooks that even some locals don't know about. Let's start with the literal gems, shall we? The secret gardens of this urban jungle.
Yes, there's magic in finding that tranquil spot amidst the hustle and bustle, like the tiled steps on 16th Avenue. Each one of those 163 steps is a mosaic masterpiece.
Climbing them feels like ascending into a colorful dream. Talking about treading lightly, have you strolled through the Shakespeare Garden in Golden Gate Park?
Indeed, every plant in that garden is mentioned in Shakespeare's plays. Strolling there is like a walk through literature itself.
I fancy reading sonnets out loud there, but the only audience I gather is the occasional squirrel.
A discerning audience, to be sure. But have you discovered the community gardens tucked away in the Mission District? Full of vibrant murals and greenery grown by local residents.
Oh, for sure. I love the juxtaposition of urban art and nature. It's such a testament to San Francisco's community spirit.
And speaking of community efforts, how about that wave organ? It's not a garden, but it's a hidden oasis of sound.
Yes, the wave organ. A true acoustic treasure by the bay. For those who haven't had the pleasure, think of a sculptural musical instrument played by the ocean itself.
It's at its best during high tide. The waves push air through pipes that jut out from the stone, and the music that comes forth, it's like listening to the ocean's secret whispers.
There was this one time I sat there, eyes closed, and I felt like I was hearing the city breathe. The foghorns, the waves, the distant laughter from a boat. It was harmony.
I always recommend it to friends who seek a moment of peace. It's meditation the San Franciscan way. But let's not forget about another hidden gem, an institution of literary history, City Lights Bookstore.
A beacon for book lovers and freedom of speech advocates. Founded in 1953, it has been a gathering place for poets, writers, and intellectuals.
If those walls could talk, they'd recite beat poetry and protest speeches. It's impossible to leave without a book cradled in your arms.
Last time I wandered into the poetry room, and I could swear I felt the residual energy of Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac discussing the complexities of life over a book stack.
You're spot on. City Lights is more than a bookstore. It's the very poetry it houses. It's where thought is provoked and revolutions begin in the quiet corners of your mind.
Speaking of unique and revolutionary, let's not wander too far without mentioning the Tenderloin National Forest. Yes, you heard right, a forest in the Tenderloin.
Tucked away between apartments and local shops. Who would believe that a lush alleyway stands as a testament to environmental reclamation and artistry?
They have murals, sculptures, and even performance spaces among the greenery. Walking in there is like entering a different dimension, a microcosm of what San Francisco is all about.
It's the unexpected wonders in this city that astonish me time and again. It just shows you don't always need a grand park to appreciate nature's respite.
And for those who enjoy a bit of camaraderie with their exploration, how about that weekly gathering at the Scrabble in the Park Club?
Challenging your vocabulary outdoors with a view of the painted ladies, that's a game day I can get behind.
I always say it's where words are worth 1,000 pictures. Speaking of games, did you know there's a miniature golf course that doubles as an art gallery?
Oh, Urban Putt. Where else can you put your way through the history and culture of San Francisco with such whimsical creativity?
And finally, we can't leave out the Seward Street slides. It's like returning to childhood, sliding down giant concrete slides hidden in a neighborhood.
Nothing says quirky like climbing up with a piece of cardboard and whizzing down the slopes amidst the laughter of fellow adventurers.
Lara and Luca's tip: wear sturdy pants, or the seat of your jeans might tell tales of your adventures to everyone behind you.
That's San Francisco for you. The city hides its stories, not between the pages of a book, but along the stairwells, behind unassuming doors, and down concrete slides.
Hidden gems like these shatter the illusion that all of SF has been uncovered. The next time you think you've seen it all, just look around the corner. A new story awaits.
And speaking of stories, in our next segment, we're going to dive into some of the weirdest facts about San Francisco that even we were surprised to learn. And we're back with Travel with Lara and Luca. Today's segment is a real treat. We're visiting the must-see places of San Francisco. Let's start off with a place that's as lively as it is iconic. Fisherman's Wharf, shall we?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like no matter how many times you visit, there's always something new to discover at the wharf.
Right? It's like an ever-changing sea of activity, not to mention the sea lions at Pier 39, which are as much a tourist attraction as the Golden Gate Bridge.
Those mischievous mammals. They just claimed the docks as their own lounge area back in the 90s, and they've become the unofficial welcome committee of San Francisco's waterfront.
And they're so funny to watch, aren't they? But let's not forget, Fisherman's Wharf isn't just about sea lions and souvenir shops.
Indeed. It's like stepping into a maritime microcosm. Did you know it's one of the busiest and well-known tourist attractions in the western United States?
Hardly surprising. You've got the irresistible scent of fresh seafood wafting through the air, mingling with sounds of street performers and the distant clang of cable car bells.
Plus, there's the Maritime Museum and those historic ships docked at Hyde Street Pier. It's as if you can literally walk through different eras of sea history with every step.
Yes, it's quite the immersive experience. Oh, and if we're talking about charm, the Ghirardelli Square is a chocolate lover's paradise.
Let's not get started on the chocolate. We might never stop. But let's journey a bit further, down into the heart of San Francisco's historical richness, Chinatown.
Chinatown, where the Dragon Gates welcome you into another world. It's amazing how it's remained the spiritual and cultural heart of Chinese communities in the city.
Walking down Grant Avenue with the lanterns floating above you, it really feels as though you've been transported right to the streets of Hong Kong.
It's one of the oldest and most established Chinatowns in America. The intricate detail on the buildings, the array of fresh produce spilling out onto the sidewalks, all seasoned with the rich scent of spices, there's nothing quite like it.
And there's always something happening, whether it's the hustle and bustle of daily life or the vibrant celebrations like Chinese New Year with its explosion of color and sound.
Do you remember that time we stumbled upon a dim sum place down one of the side alleys? I'd argue they served up some of the city's best dumplings.
Oh, I remember that little hole-in-the-wall eatery. Their shumai was legendary. That's the beauty of Chinatown. The best spots are those you find when you're not even looking.
Exactly. That little venture into the unexpected is what makes San Francisco's charm so tangible.
But let's not forget Union Square, San Francisco's crowning shopping jewel.
Union Square. If Fisherman's Wharf was the heart of the sea, Union Square would be the heart of sophistication and style in the city.
The plaza brims with life, surrounded by shop fronts that entice you in with their grandeur and twinkling window displays.
There's a rhythm to it, isn't there? The pulse of shoppers, the thrum of the theaters. It's a place where art, culture, and commerce dance together in the city's limelight.
And dare I mention, the coffee culture around Union Square is unbeatable. Small coffee shops tucked away in side streets, serving up some of the best roasts this side of the Pacific.
Oh, remember that barista who drew a tiny Golden Gate Bridge in the foam of your latte?
How could I forget? And while we may jest about the froth art, these little interactions are what make these must-see places memorable, where even a cup of coffee can hold the essence of the city.
Speaking of memorable, as this segment draws to a close, let's tease what's coming up next. I think it's the perfect segment for those who love the quirky and unusual.
You're absolutely right. We'll take our listeners on an amusing detour into San Francisco's weird and wonderful world of peculiar facts and outlandish stories.
That's up next on Travel with Lara and Luca, where we'll delve into the city's whimsical side that will surprise and delight you, from beloved fog to the mysterious sound sculptures. Weird facts, Lara. I mean, San Francisco's got more quirks than a cat cafe hosting a kazoo convention. Where do we even begin?
Oh, surely it has to be with Karl. You can't talk San Francisco without mentioning our most unpredictable resident, Karl the Fog.
Right, the only fog in the world with a cult following, and a Twitter account, no less. Did you know he's named after Karl the Giant from the movie Big Fish?
I did not. That's hilarious. Trust San Franciscans to persona fog, but honestly, when Karl rolls in, it's like watching a live performance, a gray ballet engulfing the Golden Gate.
And he's quite the moody artist, isn't he? One minute he's giving you this ethereal Golden Gate photo shoot, and the next he's ruining your tanning plans at Dolores Park.
Absolutely. Photographers and weather reporters have a love-hate relationship with him. But it's not just the fog that's weirdly famous. Have you ever made the trek to the Yoda Fountain?
Ah, a pilgrimage to the Jedi Master. Yes, at the Lucasfilm headquarters in the Presidio, there he sits, dispensing infinite wisdom, or at least it feels that way when you stare into those wise bronze eyes.
It's the convergence point for all Star Wars geeks. And you don't have to hop on a spaceship to Dagobah for an audience with Yoda, just a city bus to the Presidio.
Lara, tell me about those wild parrots. If Yoda swapped his lightsaber for feathers, he'd fit right in with that flock.
The Parrots of Telegraph Hill. They're cherry-headed conures, originally from Ecuador and Peru. Legend has it they descended from a pair of escaped or released pets back in the 90s.
An origin story worthy of a comic book. They've really made a home for themselves, haven't they? Squawking their way into the city's lore.
And into our hearts. They fly around parks and gardens, just being their raucous, colorful selves, emphatically dodging any attempts at being pigeonholed.
Apparently, the locals are quite protective of them, which is sweet to see. Humans and parrots cohabiting San Francisco in an urban wild harmony.
Speaking of harmony, have you ever synchronized your heartbeat with the city's rhythm at the wave organ?
Ah, the wave organ, an actual acoustic sculpture located on a jetty in the bay. San Francisco mixes natural elements to create literal music.
It's basically a series of pipes that interact with the waves, and the sound that emerges is, well, it's otherworldly.
And isn't it fascinating that the best time to listen is at high tide? It's like the ocean plays a secret concert twice a day, and you need the ocean's own schedule to buy in.
And while we're on the topic of high tides and secret concerts, we can't skip over the fact that San Francisco hosts an annual pillow fight. That's right, a pillow fight.
Only here could you find frenzied crowds wielding pillows like medieval knights, all the fluff replacing the fire and fury of yore.
Valentine's Day, of all days. Love and war, feathers flying, with the city embracing the chaos of such a whimsically bizarre tradition.
Now, let's talk subterranean for a moment. Not many know about the underground speakeasies from Prohibition times, a whole layer of history buried beneath our feet.
Speak of a secretive sip, Luca. These basements and hidden rooms saw more moonshine than the moon itself. Nowadays, they offer historical tours for those who wish to whisper where once there were revelries.
San Francisco, a city above and beneath. Now envision this, a pet cemetery snuggled up next to a national park.
A tiny, wistful slice of land where the devoted animals of military families rest. There's something poetic in every tiny headstone, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that in death as in life, love leaves a mark, no matter how small.
Our city's weird facts spark an endless fascination. Things like how denim jeans were invented here for the gold rush,
or that we're home to the United States' first and arguably most delightful chocolate factory. They say if Karl wasn't so chilly, those chocolates might just turn back into beans.
Well, speaking of culinary delights, next up, we'll delve deep into the seismic shifts of San Francisco's history. From its indigenous roots to the gold rush, through earthquakes and revolutions, it's a past as rich and varied as SF's beloved sourdough.
Here we are at segment 6, diving into the rich tapestry of San Francisco's history. From the frenzied days of the gold rush to the devastating quake in 1906, the city has stories to tell at every corner.
Absolutely, Luca. It's as though the very streets of San Francisco are lined with historical whispers, ready to share their tales with any who lend an ear. So, shall we give our listeners a dose of the past?
Let's start with the gold rush, 1849, a year that forever changed this humble Bay Area. Can you imagine arriving to a bustling port city, all because of the lure of gold?
Oh, the chaos it must have been. People from all over the globe pouring in, dreams of fortune lighting up their eyes, merchants, sailors, adventurers, the lot of them changing the city's destiny overnight.
Indeed, San Francisco became the pivotal point for the world's greatest treasure hunt. It's fascinating how the population just exploded from about 1,000 to 25,000 within a year. Talk about a boom town.
And with the boom came so many cultures, so many languages melting into one pot. Without the gold rush, San Francisco's magnificent diversity might never have been.
True, and the architectural rush that followed. Wooden shanties replaced by opulent buildings, all financed by the incredible wealth pouring in from the mines.
Even as the prospectors spread across the American West, San Francisco remained their anchor, their place of respite, their El Dorado of the West. The city ascended as a crucial hub of banking and industry.
But not all that glitters is gold, right? The gold rush had its dark side, a surge in crime, inequality, and for many, heartbreak. Still, it carved out San Francisco's place in history as a city of ambition and resilience.
From this ambition sprang the city's iconic structures. Speaking of which, the 1906 earthquake and fire, now there's a chapter in San Francisco's history that's nothing short of dramatic.
Dramatic, tragic, and yet an example of extraordinary human spirit. Early morning, April 18th, catastrophe shook the city, literally. The ground trembled, buildings crumbled, and fires raged.
Estimates talk of about 80% of the city being destroyed. It's a tragedy that reshaped San Francisco entirely. Over 200,000 people were left homeless, and the booming metropolis was leveled to ashes and ruins.
Here's a chilling thought. The reports of the time say that the tremors were felt from Oregon to Los Angeles and inland as far as central Nevada. Nature's immense power on display.
And amidst that chaos, stories of humanity, neighbors helping neighbors, people rescuing strangers, and then the determination to rebuild, which was nothing short of inspiring.
They say that after the disaster, city leaders promptly declared that San Francisco will be rebuilt, and fast. The city was quite literally rising from its ashes.
It was Phoenix rising. And in just a few years, San Francisco proudly hosted the Panama Pacific International Exposition, a World's Fair that celebrated not only the opening of the Panama Canal, but also the city's resurrection.
Right, and amidst the celebrations and innovations, the Roaring Twenties brought in new cultural tides and architectural marvels like the opulent theaters and the grand Coit Tower.
Let's not forget Luca, the birthplace of the United Nations in 1945, San Francisco's place in world history was cemented as delegates from 50 countries met at the War Memorial Opera House to draft and sign the UN Charter.
Fast forward to the 1967 Summer of Love. If the gold rush defined San Francisco's ambitions, the Summer of Love defined its soul. The city became an icon of free love, peace, and counterculture.
Haight-Ashbury, the epicenter of it all, with colorful murals and the smell of incense in the air. The music scene with bands like the Grateful Dead and Janis Joplin, they became the anthems of a generation seeking change.
That spirit of nonconformity, creativity, it permeates the city even today. You can feel it in the air. San Francisco encourages you to be bold, to be different.
A history that's layered, vibrant, and still very much alive. You walk through the city and you're walking through time, from the Embarcadero all the way to the Painted Ladies.
That's San Francisco for you, a city with tales of gold and tales of ruins, where every corner has a story, every hill a memory of what was and a vision of what's to come.
Next, we'll switch from the memories to the mundane but essential travel tips. In our next segment, we'll share our hard-earned wisdom on how to navigate this city like a local.
All right, fellow Globetrotters, it's time to get into the real nitty-gritty of traversing San Francisco like a pro.
Yes, in this segment, we're laying down our expert travel tips. We'll steer you clear of the tourist traps and help you navigate the city like a true local.
First up, planning your trip timing is crucial. Now, Lara, when would you say is the best time to drop by our foggy city?
Well, if you'd like to actually see the city and not just a beautiful thick blanket of fog, I'd say September and October, San Francisco's very own Indian summer.
Absolutely. The weather's sublime, but let's not forget the fringe benefits. Fewer crowds and the hardly strictly bluegrass festival.
Oh, you can't beat that free music festival in Golden Gate Park. But what about winter visitors, Luca?
Well, if you're a fan of the opera or the symphony, winter's a great time. Cultural events are in full swing. Plus, there's something magical about SF with a nip in the air, wouldn't you say?
I would, and some of the best photos I've snapped have been with a backdrop of fog. It gives the city an almost film noir vibe.
Spot on, Lara. And on to topic number 2, conquering those hills. Any tips for our first-time hill challengers?
I always say, take it slow, but more importantly, learn the art of zigzagging. Walking around the steeper parts can save your calves.
That's a great one, Lara. And for a boost, grab some Blue Bottle coffee. But remember, folks, not every famous spot is uphill. For instance, Lombard Street is easier to ascend from the bottom. It's less steep that way.
Plus, if you're feeling adventurous, rent a bike. Just make sure it has plenty of gears. San Francisco is best seen above ground, where you can appreciate every stunning vista.
No argument there. And local etiquette, Lara, because we've got some tips on that too, right?
Definitely. Always stand to the right on escalators. The left side is for those who are in a rush and want to walk up.
And when it comes to tipping, 15 to 20% is pretty standard in restaurants. But don't forget your bartenders and baristas too. $1 or $2 can go a long way in showing your appreciation.
Speaking of appreciation, let's talk about the cultural landscape here. When you're exploring neighborhoods like Chinatown or the Mission, remember, they're not just tourist attractions, they're people's homes and communities.
Right, Lara. That means be respectful, be mindful of your noise level, and always ask before taking photos where people might not want to be part of the shot.
And if you're shopping or dining in these cultural pockets, try to support small businesses. Your dollars mean a lot more there than at any chain store.
I love that about our city, the support for the unique and local. But let's switch to another form of currency that travelers often ask about, transportation cards.
The Clipper card is gold, my friends. Load it with cash and you're good for buses, trains, and even ferries in the Bay Area.
Save time, save hassle. Now, you might be tempted to rent a car, but honestly, parking is a challenge and pricey.
Oh, the parking tickets we could talk about, Luca.
Let's not go there, Lara. Anyway, navigating public transport here can be part of the fun. Each ride on a cable car or historic streetcar adds to that quintessential SF experience.
Picture it, hanging off the side of a cable car, wind in your hair, it's a must-do. Just make sure you get a good grip.
And land-wise, don't forget your comfiest shoes. because this city was made for walking.
Even better, walking is when those serendipitous discoveries happen. That hole-in-the-wall eatery, or the boutique with one-of-a-kind SF gifts. Now, Luca, how about we lighten up the topic with some funny mishaps we've witnessed visitors have?
Gladly. You know, one of my favorites is when tourists board the wrong boat thinking it's a bay cruise and ending up on a commuter ferry to Oakland.
Or the confused faces when they hop off at the BART Civic Center stop, expecting the Civic Center to be right there, but surprise, it takes a bit more of a walk.
How about the workout newbies get when they mistake the insanely steep Filbert Street steps for a simple shortcut to Coit Tower?
Every time, Luca. But to end on a serious note, let's talk safety. Keep your wits about you. Like any city, we have our share of pickpockets, especially in crowded areas.
Be smart with your belongings. And remember, SF is pretty chill, but always exercise common sense, day or night.
To cap it off, embrace the unexpected, be adventurous in your plans, and you're guaranteed an amazing time in San Francisco.
And to entice you even more, in our next segment, we're whisking you away on side excursions. Think vineyards, redwoods, and quaint bayside towns.
That's right, we're not just city dwellers. We know how to escape in style.
But for now, we'll end our segment here. Stay tuned for some absolutely divine day trips, just a stone's throw from the city streets. And we're back, ready to sweep you away on some of the most enchanting side excursions just a stone's throw from San Francisco.
That's right, Luca. When you've navigated the twists and turns of city life, these getaways are the perfect palate cleanser. Let's start with a place that's synonymous with relaxation and exquisite taste, wine country.
Ah, wine country. You know, some say it's the soil, others say it's the sun, but there's something truly magical about Napa Valley and Sonoma County.
For our listeners who are perhaps considering a day trip, one thing's certain. The rolling hills and vibrant vineyards offer a stark contrast to San Francisco's urban sprawl.
Can't argue with that. It's like stepping into an impressionist painting. Clusters of grapes basking in the California sun, with that hint of fermentation whimsically hanging in the air.
And let's not forget the wine tastings. Where else can you sip on a velvety Cabernet while casually chatting with a winemaker about the complexities of barrel aging?
I'll never forget the time when I met this fascinating sommelier in Napa who could recite the history of every single wine in the cellar. And when he spoke about the grapes, you'd think he was talking about his own children.
They do have a passion that's contagious. Now, a pro tip for our listeners, make reservations ahead of time. These wineries are sometimes booked out weeks in advance, especially during the peak seasons.
Speaking of peak experiences, just west of wine country, there's this natural sanctuary that I can only describe as transcendent, the mighty Muir Woods.
The word transcendent truly hits the mark for Muir Woods. Standing amidst those towering coast redwoods, some of which are over 1,000 years old, it's a humbling experience.
Did you know the tallest tree there is about 258 feet? It's like nature's skyscraper.
Hard to fathom, isn't it? And speaking of the preservation efforts, it's incredible how it began as a gift to the federal government with the stipulation that the land would be protected forever.
A gift that keeps on giving, Lara. Let's remember, this is a great spot for families too. The boardwalk trails are quite accessible, and kids tend to be in awe of the cathedral-like ambience.
Definitely. As John Muir himself said, this is the best tree lovers monument that could possibly be found in all the forests of the world.
Across the Golden Gate, we have Sausalito. This charming town has the vibe of a seaside Mediterranean village, don't you think?
Absolutely. Just the ferry ride there gives you these picturesque views of the San Francisco skyline, Alcatraz, and the bridge.
Strolling along Bridgeway with the scent of sea salt in the air, unique art galleries, and that eclectic mix of dining spots, it's easy to lose track of time.
The houseboat communities are another highlight. Each one has its own character and story. Some people are surprised to find out that these floating homes stemmed from the bohemian culture of the post-war era.
History floating right before our eyes. And if you're after some artisanal shopping, Sausalito definitely has a flair for boutique items you won't find anywhere else.
It's the handcrafted jewelry, local art, and one-of-a-kind souvenirs for me. I always end up bringing back gifts for everyone whenever I visit.
Me too. Now, as much as I love spending money on loved ones, and let's be honest, on myself too, there's something to be said about the simple pleasure of a scenic bike ride there.
It's an active way to enjoy the unique atmosphere, and you can rent bikes right off the ferry. The views as you pedal along the waterfront are truly unforgettable.
Before we wrap up our side excursions, it's worth mentioning that all of these places have layers of culture, history, and natural beauty that you could explore for days.
They're the perfect complement to the bustling energy of San Francisco, offering a slower pace and a chance to reflect on the beauty of Northern California.
Next time you're in SF and you wonder what lies beyond those fog-crowned hills, you know there's a wealth of experiences waiting for you just a short trip away.
And speaking of experiences, when we return, we're going to conclude our San Francisco journey with our thoughts on this captivating city. Don't miss our wrap-up as we reminisce and ponder on the city that has stolen our hearts.
And as the fog tenderly envelops the city, tucking it in for the night, we reach the conclusion of today's San Franciscan tale on Travel with Lara and Luca.
Ah, Luca, I can almost see the orange hues of the sunset dipping below the Golden Gate as we wrap up. What a journey through San Francisco's storied streets we've shared.
It's been incredible, hasn't it? From the iconic sights to the delicious cuisines, the city has revealed itself to us once again.
And revealed new secrets, too. I think my new favorite might just be those hidden garden spots we spoke about. There's something magical about finding serenity in the heart of such a bustling city.
You're so right. And can we talk about those weird facts? I mean, Karl the Fog even has its own Instagram account. Only in San Fran, right?
He's practically a celebrity with all those moody selfies. But Luca, do you remember the story behind the wild parrots of Telegraph Hill? I think I'll be listening for their squawks the next time I'm there.
Definitely. Those birds have become as much a part of the city's soundscape as the clanging cable cars. But let's not forget the deep dive into history we took. The Gold Rush, the 1906 earthquake, the Summer of Love.
Those moments in time are like the veins of gold running through the bedrock of San Francisco. They shaped the city, sharing their riches with us in the form of stories and spirit.
Well said, Lara. As for those expert travel tips, I hope our listeners make use of them. San Francisco, with all its hills and microclimates, can be a bit of a puzzle to navigate.
A puzzle is putting it lightly, Luca, but we've got the best insider tips. I'm really proud of that segment. Practical, personal, and a touch poetic, if I do say so myself.
No arguments here. And for anyone thinking of a side excursion, I can't emphasize enough the sheer wonder of the surrounding areas. Wine country, Muir Woods, Sausalito, it's like the city's charm just keeps spilling over.
Every side trip is a story waiting to happen. The connection to nature, to history, to wine, it's robust and enchanting.
Which brings us to our final thoughts. Lara, if you had to choose just one word to encapsulate San Francisco, what would it be?
Resilience. Through earthquakes, fires, and fog, she rises. She weaves together cultures, cuisines, and curiosities with a grace that's unmatched.
Beautifully put. For me, it's diversity. Not just in the people, which is astounding, but in every aspect, from the topography to the history, the food, the architecture. There's truly no place like it.
Listeners, as we bid you farewell, we invite you to let San Francisco inspire you as it has inspired us. Take your hearts and leave them there, just for a while, and they will be returned to you, fuller and richer.
And so, until we meet again, keep your travel dreams vivid and your spirit of adventure alive.
Whether you've visited before, plan to visit, or simply journey with us in your imagination, San Francisco awaits.
And next time on Travel with Lara and Luca, join us as we explore the enchanting streets, the historic beauty, and the vibrant life of... But that's a story for another episode.
Until then, travel enthusiasts, keep sharing your stories with us and keep tuning in for more tales of wonder and wanderlust.
It's been a pleasure guiding you through the San Francisco experience. We hope we've sparked your curiosity and filled your travel cups to the brim.
And with that, dear friends, we bid you a heartfelt goodbye. When you find yourself out in the world, wherever you may roam, remember, every place has a story, and every story brings us together.
So long, until the next adventure unfolds. This is Luca.
And Lara, wishing you journeys as mesmerizing as a San Francisco melody. Goodbye, and thank you for traveling with us.